Alright guys, today we're in the shop here at my house. We're going to be taking this 1998 CR125 motor apart. First things first, you got to clean it. You don't disassemble a motor without making sure it's 100% clean first. Anything you get inside that motor that's foreign contaminants can cause problems later, and you don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and polish it up with some Simple Green, get all this dirt off of here, clean up the hoses, get the hoses removed, and then we're going to pop the cylinder off, see if it needs a crank. If it needs a crank, we're going to go deeper into this bike. Probably going to need a crank. We're not 100% sure yet. During the time lapse, Alex cleaned up this engine, got a little bit of the dirt off, and we get a little bit closer to taking it apart. We're going to actually continue cleaning now. During that time, I went and whipped together this quick little engine stand. Had a transmission stand. My dad does transmissions quite often, so I have this stand in my shop. Had an extra bracket for it, and we made something really quick. I know it's very, it's garbage, but hey, garbage works sometimes. So we got this here holding the engine, kind of nice. Rotate any angle we need to go. We're going to pull the stator out now, then we're going to go ahead and keep cleaning this so we can get the head off for you guys. Alright guys, so it's very important. You're going to look in here and you just want to make sure that you get this washer out of here. If you don't take that washer out, when you go ahead and put your remover tool in there, it's not going to seat in enough and you can end up stripping the tool out or stripping the stator out. So it's very important to make sure you get that wash out of there using a screwdriver or a magnet. A little magnetic screwdriver should do it. Get that out of there. So again, very important that you take this washer out. Also, remember these are left-handed threads. Two 10mm bolts hold on the stator. Stator looks really nice. A little bit of corrosion. There was some water in here. Common problem with these 125s that still have the plastic cover for this part of the engine. I always recommend that you replace that with a metal one, whether it be a Boyson, whether it be one from a I believe 00 to 07 125 or a pre-1990 125. They'll have a metal cover on this that uses a gasket, or as I do, RTV sealer, and it really helps keep the water out of here. If you don't do that, you get some corrosion in here, and I recommend going in here and cleaning often and making sure water is not getting trapped in your motor. Alright guys, so we're going to do a breakdown. This is how you take the cylinder off of your motor. It's pretty simple. We're going to start out, we're going to get our 6mm socket, and we're going to go ahead and loosen all of our clamps that hold our coolant hoses on. And you can just go ahead and pull those off, assuming you already drained all your fluids. At this point in the motor build, I'd hope so. Now you're going to go ahead, take your power valve cover off of this side. Make sure when you do this, you're using a good screwdriver. It's important that you don't strip this out. I mean, I guess if you don't care about it, you don't care, but I prefer a nice bolt. If it's too stuck, try and use maybe an impact screwdriver. This one wasn't very stuck, so it came out nice and easy. Always make sure you're putting stuff into a box with organized. I'm gonna take the head off and I'm gonna put everything in a row so I know how to put it back together, and I know I don't put the wrong bolts and wrong nuts in the wrong places. So what we're seeing in here right now is we don't have a lot of carbon buildup. We have a lot of oil buildup though. This bike was not getting all the oil out of there. Instead of carbon buildup on that, we just have a buttload of oil pouring around in here. Alright, so now that we took that off, we're gonna flip this up for you guys so you can get a better view of it. Wow. I mean, it's just, wow. Nothing was going out of that exhaust. This is from running insanely rich, is what I would assume. Bogging the bike down, not opening it up. We're gonna have to go back to what Alex was doing originally, pouring it on the floor, and we're gonna have to drain this sucker. Alright guys, so we're gonna go ahead and drain all this oil out of our power valve assembly. I've never had a motor have this much oil in it. It's a whole bunch. So we're gonna drain it out, see exactly how much we have in here. I mean, this is absurd. Every rebuild's a new experience. Alright, so all you have to do now, get yourself a small pair of pliers or a screwdriver or a pick. I'm going to use a pick. Just going to go in here with a needle and you're just going to pop this clip off. Then you can go ahead and take off your power valve arm. And then after you take your power valve arm, go ahead and grab this little washer that goes underneath that, which I think is in backwards right now, but don't quote me on that till I go ahead and open the book up, but I'm 90% sure this is upside down right now. Put that in with your clip and then just leave your power valve unconnected. Alright guys, now that you have it flipped up forward, you're going to want to remove your 5 star nuts on the top. We're going to go ahead and remove our head now. So we're looking at, this is the head. Inside the head doesn't look too bad. It's kind of, there's not much buildup on it, which tells me it's either running lean or it's got a lot of oil. I'm not sure exactly. So now that we have our head removed from the top, we can go on to the 4 bolts around the base to take off the cylinder. All of a sudden I grew 4 hands. Now that we have all the nuts removed from the cylinder and the arm is released, we're good to remove the cylinder. Okay, break it loose. You can go angle to angle, just be careful. If it will not release, you can go ahead and grab a plastic mallet and softly tap. Go ahead and slide this off. Just catch the arm, that's all. Okay, pull the cylinder out. Wow, she's soaked in oil. We're gonna go ahead, wipe the cylinder off a little bit because it's pretty ugly right now. It's soaked in all this oil and gunk, and then we'll get back to you on what we think the inside looks like. We're gonna go ahead and remove the circlips on the side of the piston, and then remove the wrist pin so that we can pull the piston off the crank. You're gonna go in here with a needle or a pair of needle nose pliers, whichever one you have or works best for you. Press that needle in and pull it out the side. Be careful, these things shoot across the shop really fast.
There it goes.
And there it goes, just like that, went woo! Across shop, didn't know where it went. So we're gonna go find that. Psych, I ain't wasting my time. Alright, go ahead and slide your wrist pin out. And pull your piston off. So one thing we know, A, the piston rings are getting run a little bit too long. As you can see with the burn that was going beyond the ring. 2, building up a lot, it's a lot of carbon, the whole head is black. Shouldn't have that. runs too rich. 3, and the most important thing and why you shouldn't run a piston too long, there's a crack right there. I don't know if you can see it, kind of hard. I'll kind of go into the camera a little better. But this is cracked all the way, probably about ½ an inch long. Now that's not a big deal right now because we took it apart in time, but had that kept going, it could eat, drop into your bottom end, lock your motor up. Bad day at the dunes. We don't ride dunes. Right. So now we go ahead, take our clean rag out of here. And we can find out how the rod feels. Now, there's not much side-to-side play, which is good to see, which a little bit's fine. Up and down play is what we're looking for. And there is no up and down movement in the bearing, which is very good. This is a usable crank in my opinion so far. So we'll go ahead and spin this. Be very careful if you spin this in here. Do not hit the sides of the bottom end. And just feel for rough bearings. Doesn't sound like mine. Mine sounded worse than this. Felt really good. I think Alex should run this crank. So, look in the bottom. Look to see what comes up after doing that a little bit. We're not seeing any metal flakes. If you see metal flakes, shiny metal flakes in there, that means your thrust washers and the side of your bearings, which is right here and here, as you can see, are going bad. If those start going bad and they start getting all over your crank, then you know it's time to change your crank. If you don't catch it in time, it goes kablooey. Other than that, our ports look really nice. It never had any porting done to it, so it's pretty much just a basic motor. Still got the factory air boot on there. Factory fiberglass reeds. Old school right there. Nobody runs these anymore. Alright, so we just pulled this off. We're kind of sad to see that the clutch isn't a fancy aftermarket clutch, but we're going to go ahead and pull these clutch bolts out and find out how our clutches look themselves. Pop that apart. Pressure plate looks like it's in good shape. Alright, so what we got in here look like possibly EBC clutch pack. I'm not 100% sure. I think this is steel. Yeah, it's steel. Alright, so that's like good and bad, guys. So that's all depending on personal preference. I like using aluminum. This one's running steels. They're also a good clutch pack. I'm not sure what brand it is, but it's a nice set and it's still in good condition. What we're also going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull out a handful of these. We're going to take a look at the basket. So if you take a look at the basket, our ribbing is not real bad in this bike. So we're going to run it. Alright guys, so what we're looking at here is we get down the stack, and these are the ones that were closest to the motor, and we had some burnt clutches in here. It got really hot. Pretty common that the ones in the bottom of the basket are going to go first. This clutch would still be runnable for a short amount of time. We're going to go ahead and probably run a whole brand new clutch pack for this bike. So you see these little ribs in here? This is your drive side. Those ribs are from all your clutches smashing going this direction. They all keep hitting it to push this harder to go forward. As that happens, those ribs get in there. When those ribs get really deep, as you're trying to release that, they'll get stuck on the ribs and they won't be able to pull apart. Whenever that happens, your clutch feels like garbage. So there's two ways to fix it. One, you can throw a buttload of money into buying an aftermarket clutch basket, or what I would normally do to stock baskets is just take a fine file, take the basket out of the bike, file those back down to being flat, and reinstall it. You can do that quite a few times before having to replace the basket without hurting the engine. We're done with the first take apart of the motor. We showed you what we took apart on its time lapse and on and off. So right now we're going to tell you what we did. so far. We took the cylinder off of the head. We've checked out the crank. The crank's looking really good. We're thinking we can reuse it. May even be an original crank from 1998, which is pretty sweet. It still feels buttery smooth, so we're going to go ahead and run that. Along that, we've also looked at the cylinder. The cylinder's looking a little bit better than I originally thought, and what we're going to see in here is there's not much for any scarring that I can see. Anything major that I'd be worried about. So we're going to go ahead and run this cylinder. Still has the hatching in it. We're going to take that power valve apart because it is pretty nasty in there. As you can see, lots of oil. So we're going to get this taken apart and the next part cleaned all out and ready to be put back together. Other things we found is the cylinder head looks really good. It never went through a blow up on this specific head or cylinder, which is really nice. Sometimes people reuse these heads after a blow up and you'll find them full of garbage, which sucks. We found out that the piston has a crack in it. I showed you earlier, but so if you look, there's a crack going right up the piston skirt. Hard to tell, but there's a crack there. Whatever. So we found out there's a crack in the piston, which means that this piston was ran too long. It might be an OEM piston. It looks like an OEM piston. There's a lot of carbon buildup on the top, so I cannot guarantee whether or not that this is an aftermarket one. We're going to scrub that up. We'll see if we can find a serial number and get information on that. Other than that, not looking too terrible. The rings were used. It was ran too long. With these rings, there is blow off from the carbon around the rings, which means your piston is worn out. Power valve covers not cracked. Good to know, good to see. The flywheel looks pretty good. Doesn't have any real rust on it. A little bit, you expect a little bit because this had a plastic cover on it. Sometimes they're completely brown with rust, and that's, you know, not as good as having it nice. The stator looks really good too. Doesn't look like it had a loose flywheel. Sometimes if a flywheel comes loose and starts shaking in the bike from somebody else, you know, having problems not tightening it down properly, you'll get the electrode right here that hits it will get worn out. This did happen on one of my CR250s at one point, so something to watch out for. Finally, we'll get to take a look at the reed cage, and the reed cage still has the air boot on it. Nobody ever cut that. You have to cut that to put the aftermarket stuff in there, so that's pretty nice that it's all together. Nice OEM part. Still has the original fiberglass reeds from back in the 90s. They don't run these on bikes anymore. Everything's carbon fiber now, which we're going to swap them out to carbon fiber, but that's pretty cool that it still ran those old school reeds. Other than that, I didn't find any incorrect bolts in incorrect places, any cracks, any problems. I'm very happy with what we found inside of this motor so far, and this is what we told you about the difference between buying a slightly higher end bike from somebody who cared about their bike and buying a complete crap bike. And we'll get to show you the crap bike in the next video we do on this bike. We're sorry to tell you that in this video we're only going to be doing a cylinder and top end rebuild due to how nice we found out the bottom end of the bike is. But I have more bikes, we'll build more bikes. Give us some likes and comments and we'll get you more bikes. We're going to go into depth on how to rebuild the HPP power valve system in this bike, step for step on what you're going to want to do to make this engine correct when you put it back together. That's all we have for you today. Please ring that bell, like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out. We really want to help you out. Give us some comments on what you liked and didn't like about this video. Stay slow.